Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Srini here, and this is part 4 of my TestNG series here. And if you're new to this channel, do consider subscribing to it, as you'll be getting a lot of free videos on Selenium, Java, API automation, robotic process automation, and we have a lot of interview questions playlist here, so you can just have a look at it and do subscribe to it. So let's continue with our interview questions as well as tutorial on Testng.xml. So I'll just jump on to the practical part continuation. So we had stopped last time here where we had ran this particular test case, which is going to be nothing but a collection of two test cases here, right? This suit had a test and a test had two test cases here. Two test cases, when I say two test case methods, which are a part of this test case, right? So these methods I'm talking about, these are called test case methods. Okay. So we had seen that both of them had passed. So what we can also do is we can just click on this project folder, click on refresh. It's going to generate an output. Look at this folder which has got generated. It's called test output. And if you expand it, you can see a lot of important information within this. So you have to just explore it out. So if you look at this, there is an index.html. So I'll just do one thing. I'll just go to that particular file. So you'll have to just double click on it, and it will give you a graphical representation of your overall execution, which we have done in TestNG. So look at this TestNG reports. So I am just going to show few important things as a part of this, since we are covering everything within TestNG in detail. I want to explain each and everything as it is. Okay. So it shows you two methods were totally there. We're talking about two test methods here, and both of them are passed. Fine. If you want to see which are the names of the test method, just click on this show link. So it shows you on the right hand side as well as below it what are those test cases. If you see test case 1, test case 2, if you want to click on this test case 1, it just shows it's in green color, right? It's passed. Again, this is also green, and the overall suit is also passed. Now, if you want to see if any methods got ignored, any test method was not executed, like skipped, then those could be found here. For our test case, nothing was skipped. If I click on this, right, you're not going to see anything which is like skipped. So we are going to see usage where we can see skip, right? So I'm going to do one small change and then again rerun this particular test case to show you how is that this skip part is going to come, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to include one attribute in my one test case. So there are two test cases here, right? And I've included both of them in my TestNG sanity.xml. So what I'm going to say here, I'm just going to have one attribute. It is called as depends on. So I'm saying depends on methods equal to, I'm going to mention which method it will be dependent on. So let's copy this name here, right? So what is the meaning of this attribute? It means that this particular @test method depends on this particular method. That means if this particular method successfully gets passed without any failure, then this method also will be executed. It will not be skipped. Otherwise, if this fails due to some reason, then this method will not even be started, right? Execution won't even be started. It will be simply skipped. So it will come to this category. Instead of fail, it will come to skip. So let's look at that. So I've mentioned this depends on methods equal to test case 2. That means this method is dependent on this test case, right? If let's say this method fails for some reason, let's just try to put some exception here. That some exception got encountered. So I'm trying to explicitly throw exception here. This could also be found maybe, based on the logic of the code. If something has gone wrong, then this could also be found with the way of exception handling we're doing. This could be found out, right? In that scenario as well, since this particular method has failed, it will lead to a, so basically if you don't do any exception handling, let's just say it out that way. If no exception handling is done, right? No exception handling is done, then dependent test case will be skipped. The reason is because this particular test method has failed. Now you might be wondering, why am I saying that we are not doing any exception handling with this syntax? This is not a way of doing exception handling. You are throwing exception. Of course, in the ways of doing exception handling, you might have encountered this as one of the way, but this is just throwing an exception. It is not catching the exception. Whenever we say exception handling, it should be all about catching the exception, right? So that it can be done by try catch and try catch finally. These are the ways we can basically catch exception and finally obstruct from some other statements to be. So basically, it would just allow your other particular flow to continue. It will not stop your entire program flow to get abrupted in between. So that is how you do your exception handling using try catch or try catch finding with just the throw new, or if you try to use throws clause at the method level. If you try to use, let's say, throws clause at the method level, these are just going to throw the exception. It's not going to basically handle it at that method level, right? And we don't have any main method here. This itself is main method, right? It's just like a triggering point. You don't have any method like main to call this, right? Or if this throws an exception, then main can handle it. No, there is no main method here in TestNG, so it has to take care on its own. If it is not able to take care, it will throw exception. So let's look at this way. If you look at this particular line, it's throwing an arithmetic exception. So if this throws arithmetic exception, there is no one to catch it. So this will get stuck, and so this will get skipped because this is dependent on your test case 2. So this is how we write the syntax for one particular @test method to be dependent on the other test method. So let's run our test sanity since we have included both the test cases here. So let's run it. So you look at this one, it has completed successfully the execution, but it has reported in one failure and one skip. Failure because you have got arithmetic exception. So if you notice the flow as well, let me show you the flow. So see, we had two test cases to be executed, test case 1 and test case 2. Let's go back to a file. Test case 1 is dependent on test case 2. That means always test case 2 will have the high priority and will be started first. That is why if you see, we are in test case 2 is getting displayed here. And then we come out of that and then we encounter that, oh, test case 2 has failed at this particular line of code, 25th line. So if it highlights that, you can just double click on it. So this is the line where it is basically failing. This particular arithmetic exception is getting thrown. So because of this, what is happening? Your dependent test case also could not be started. That is your test case 1, and that got skipped. If you see the status here overall, it is saying skips is 1. And look at this. On this results of running suit section, you can look at the stack trace completely of where the exception is thrown, what is the hierarchy, and you can also see the test case 1 has basically got skipped, right? And now let me do one thing. Let me just refresh this report. So I had showed you all in the previous session that with the index.html, right, you can look at this kind of a report. And I told you all that if you see the ignored method section, it was showing 0 ignored methods last time. But since we have got one skipped method here, you will be able to see something getting mentioned here. So let's look at that part. So I'll do one thing. I'll just copy this for now, close it, refresh this particular project. Okay, I'll just again load that particular path. So here you go. So you have got one skipped methods here, test case 1, and you have got one failed method here, test case 2. It's showing out to you one failed, one skipped. Ignored is 0, but it is showing in the skip. Now, what is ignored then? If you are saying this is skipped, then what is the meaning of ignored? So ignored means that we have another attribute that is called as enabled. So enabled attribute will tell you whether a test case is ignored or whether it is accepted or processed. So if I say enabled is equal to false, if I say enabled equal to false, then what will happen? Then this particular test case should not even be run because you have made enabled equal to false. That means it's called as ignored method. So let's run this particular file and you will be able to understand clearly all the important aspects of this Testng.xml. So let's run it. So now you can see the test run is showing as 1 instead of 2 because we have made the first test case 1 to be ignored by making the enabled attribute equal to false. So now let's refresh it. Okay, so you could see there was just one method mentioned here and that got failed. If you look at the ignored methods, it's showing you which particular method is ignored. So this is got reflected now, right? So this particular method is got reflected now, and let's click on this chronological view. So this shows how the entire execution has happened, and also it shows how much time in milliseconds it has taken for each step, right? So this was just all about the part two, and I wish to cover more in the upcoming session. I just want to keep it short and crisp so that you don't get confused in one session. So I'll continue in my next lecture. Thank you all.